Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Visionary Nurse podcast. Stay tuned. This is Antonette Montalvo, the host of the Visionary Nurse podcast. I am the owner of Antonette Montalvo Consulting and Coaching Services, where I'm your community health consultant, coach and mentor to nurses, and all-around visionary nurse. I am so excited to have you join another episode of the Visionary Nurse podcast, where it's really just built to inspire, encourage, and educate nurses on the variety of ways that nurses can truly impact our health and healthcare. The series that we're in is centered around the power in partnership, and it's really just looking to highlight the many different amazing things that are happening in the community setting, especially as my desire is to see communities whole and well, in connecting with my background as a pediatric nurse practitioner, and just recognizing that to have healthy children, you need healthy communities. So surrounding the idea of advocacy in rural and community health is a big deal for me, and finding ways to create sustainable and collaborative changes to access care is really what drives home a lot of this podcast and a lot of the work that I do. So stay tuned. It's going to be a great episode. I have a wonderful guest that is really going to be able to highlight some of the great things that are happening on the community setting and ways that nurses might be able to take part. Hang tight. So hey everyone, it's Antonette, your host of the Visionary Nurse podcast, owner of Antonette Montalvo Consulting and Coaching Services, your community health consultant, coach and mentor for nurses, and all-around visionary nurse. Today's guest is going to be a wonderful one, especially in the realm of rural and community health, and a very, very important topic. I think this is so timely as well at the time of this recording, just thinking about this particular month representing Child Abuse Awareness Month, and thinking about how to prevent these measures, and especially a lot of the things that we have encountered with this pandemic and just so many different stressors that have happened in the community setting for children and just for families in general. I think it's really important to highlight those who are doing and providing work that is trying to alleviate that and working to change our community setting. So my guest today is Zay Sanders. He is working at Beyond Abuse, and it is going to be very, very insightful just thinking about his role and what nurses can provide. So Zay, how are you doing?
Hey, Antonette, how are you? Thank you for having me on today.
Absolutely. It's so great to have you here. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I'm excited to highlight many of the things you have to do. Of course, no one really wants for these types of things to have to happen, but if they are there, it's important to shine a light on what resources are available. So just to kind of kick us off, I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, your current role, and why you're even passionate about what you do.
Absolutely. Well, as you stated before, I work for Beyond Abuse, and even though I work for Beyond Abuse, I'm actually employed under 0 to 3. That's where the grant funding comes from, and I'm a part of the Safe Babies Court team. Now, to explain my role a little bit further there, I'm the community coordinator for the Safe Babies Court team in the upstate South Carolina, Lawrence specifically. Our community was selected due to its relatively high number of intakes to participate as a part of the South Carolina statewide expansion of this approach. My role will be to work with families and the community in tandem, using the science of early childhood development and creating a thriving environment for infants and toddlers that are involved in the child welfare system. And in Lawrence County, that number has been kind of on the incline, over the past few years. But protective capacities from adults can be raised, and we can, as a community, come together and find ways to help support these families. So that in and of itself is my role, to gather the community around these families and find ways we can support them and ways that we can help create that thriving environment for toddlers and children.
Wow, it's just amazing to hear that this is in place. You're definitely speaking my language, especially for the 0 to 3 and thinking about the pediatric population, because that drives, again, a lot of just my passion about, especially as my work as a pediatric nurse practitioner. It was very difficult, especially in some of the clinical settings that I practiced in, is just thinking about not only changing the moment for that particular child or family at a visit, but also seeing the bigger picture within the community setting that's impacting that child. What are some of the developmental hindrances? What are some of the barriers to care? What are some of the big issues and risk factors that exist? So the fact that this is even provided, again, we don't want to have to see these kinds of things increase. And I'm sure that as you get into it, you'll talk about some of the challenges that you've experienced, but to know that the resource is there is wonderful. And also just kind of a disclaimer for our listening audience. The thoughts and the information that's shared here is really only for educational purposes. It's not meant to diagnose. It's not meant to treat. It's not meant to stand in the place of your care provider, but it's really just to provide a way to educate not only nurses, but anyone who might take a listen to this and thinking about what resources are out there. Maybe you are confronted with situations like this yourself and you need to know what's there, or even maybe you're looking for solutions and answers for the community that you serve, and finding ways to think about unique opportunities that could help provide that holistic care for your community. So I guess just kind of jumping back to all of that, it's wonderful to hear that you're in this role, but I'm curious to find out what drove you towards wanting to be a part of this role. What put you in the place of even being passionate about being in the community setting, and specifically in this very kind of tender subject matter of dealing with how to live beyond abuse, so to speak, with the organization that you're connected with?
Well, children deserve to be loved and properly cared for, of course. Absolutely. But also, parents deserve the opportunity to learn ways to properly love and care for their children. And that's something that we want to see happen more in the community. And that's where my heart is. I want to see our community actively providing ways to protect our children and grow our parents and caregivers. So it's a two-way approach. Yes, we want the children to be protected, but ultimately that cannot be accomplished unless we grow our parents and caregivers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And especially just thinking about, I imagine some of the challenges that you may face, and just I really want to dive into some of the services and just the specific nitty-gritty things that your organization does, especially under the umbrella of this grant. But just kind of painting the backdrop and the picture of all of this, obviously I know as an insider perspective, we got a chance to work together through a beautiful coalition that was really trying to combine many different sectors and organizations together to provide a little bit more of a cohesive voice for the rural community that we serve. The big hot topic, and something that it's kind of my big soapbox, so to speak, is all about cross-sectoral collaboration. That is a big, big, big passion of mine. And just thinking about how do you not only extend outside of, for example, my own clinical knowledge, but working across business sectors, working across other community outreach, working with your local libraries, working with a variety of different settings and organizations, especially in areas that might be underserved, low resources, rural. They might have a wide spreading network, but it's hard to make that cohesive, really thinking about how you can join those forces. And so when I think about all of that and thinking about the importance of all of that, some of those big challenges kind of surface, right? Because when you're in a rural area, you have issues of transportation. Sometimes you have issues of isolation, connectivity. During the pandemic, sure, it was jump online, do your telehealth visits. But if you don't have a strong enough Wi-Fi, are you able to do that? And we've already seen on a baseline level across multiple different news reports, just that fluctuation of reports with abuse, for example, specifically with children, sometimes ended up either dropping or going sky high as a result of not having some of those regular protective measures, such as if a child went to school, if they went to daycare, and certain things were able to be highlighted. So just thinking about some of these challenges that you face, maybe you can kind of span into a little bit of what your organization specifically does, a little bit more of the nitty gritty of the services, and then just thinking about, in light of all those things, what are some big challenges that you've confronted as you've worked to execute your line of work?
Well, one of the major challenges we've actually seen specifically with the families that we serve, one of the major challenges is access to things such as transportation.
Right.
That's been the number one thing we've seen across the board. Lawrence County being slightly more rural than other areas, we have a lot of families where they may have to engage in services that may be out of county, they may be out of where they locally reside. And that can present problems in the case flow process when the parents must complete point A before moving to point B.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
And at times, certain, families, they run into issues where they may be deemed as, not cooperating, but that's not the case. It's not that they're not cooperating, is that we haven't set them up in a way that they can cooperate, if that makes sense.
Right. Absolutely. And I mean, it's really important for that to be highlighted for sure.
Absolutely. So one of the things we do as an organization as Safe Babies Court Team is we explore avenues in which we can cross those barriers. We have something that we call an active community team, where it's compiled of various local leaders in the community, where we meet once a month and we talk about those barriers. We talk about ways that we can overcome these barriers, whether it be transportation, whether it be, like you said before, a weaker Wi-Fi signal, or whatever the case may be. We don't leave it to the families themselves. We say, no, we are the community and we care about our families and we want to step in and see how we can bridge that gap.
Right. No, that's so good. And it's just such a great reminder of thinking about, in order to really achieve sustainable change, you have to collaborate. You really just do. And I think now more than ever, that has been highlighted, especially across multiple different systems. And the fact that you help alleviate some of that pressure of the family to figure out, because a lot of times, if we're being candid within healthcare, it can be, especially if you're just strapped for resources, for time, you put a lot of responsibility, which should be, the family should have some level of responsibility in it, but sometimes it's a little bit over the top as you are, as me, throwing out a lot of different advice, a lot of different factors, do this, and this, just on the physical health level of caring for your child. And then on top of that, all the other complicated nuances that come with it, especially if it's a little bit more of a challenged area as it applies to resources, as it applies to transportation, as you mentioned, and just understanding the importance of that partnership, and thinking about how important partnership is and how important it is to work with or other organizations across your community to sit and talk and say, what's effective? Is this working for the people that we're serving? What other information do we need to gather from those who we are serving to effectively serve them, versus throwing out a lot of different projects and ideas and it's not even accessible across the board. So thinking about that, and you've kind of hinted on it a little bit, what does that partnership mean to you across the board with this, the advisory council that you're with, and even some of the work that we got a chance to do? How has that panned out for your organization, and even including community members into that?
Well, when including other people into the process, I find that we actually find a more receptive audience when we engage, when we talk to them as far as how they fit into the roles of helping families. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so good to have the receptive audience, because sometimes, it can be very easy to say, here's my agenda, here's what I want to accomplish, but also making sure that you have an audience that's saying, we are here to work together in this process of it.
Exactly. And finding and letting them know you're not just here to be a body in a seat or a face on a screen. There's a role that you play.
Yeah, absolutely. So with some of these partnerships, are you able to incorporate community members, maybe some of the people that you serve, clients that you incorporate, or even just getting feedback in terms of what your biggest barriers are?
Absolutely. One of the things that we love to do in these community team meetings is include families that have already gone through the Safe Babies Court Team process, so they can speak as a firsthand experience of, yes, guys, when the community coordinates around the family, I am living proof that this helps, this works, this is what the community needs.
Right. That's wonderful. And I really appreciate hearing those kinds of things, because again, the basis of even just my work as a community health consultant, the big driving force is getting the voice of the community. I can raise my hand and say, yes, I have definitely been on the other end of things, in the sense of I want to throw out a lot of different ideas and projects, but I definitely have to evaluate what works best for the person that I'm serving. There may be ideas that I have, there may be things that are helpful, but I also want to make sure that whoever is on the receiving end fan of all of these different projects or ideas or services, even if it is needed from my vantage point, having their, as you mentioned, their vote of confidence in the process of it is a game changer. So just with that partnership alone, it not only includes the organizations, but those within the community that you actually serve to understand and evaluate, is this working for what you need? Is this even what you really need in order to avoid those frustrations that often end up coming up as if you're, speaking two different languages and really trying to get on the same page? It's Antonette, your visionary nurse, owner of Antonette Montalvo Consulting and Coaching Services. I am so excited to be able to share an unboxing video of the Visionary Nurse gift sets. You've probably seen a lot of information floating around on these Visionary Nurse gift sets, and they were definitely inspired by just my love and passion to dare everyone to be influentially visionary. I'm really excited just for what these will hopefully do for you, just to be able to encourage you in your day-to-day, to inspire you, inspire your vision, and just for those who may not be nurses, to encourage the nurse in your life. We know that the last couple of years have been really tough for nurses, and so really wanted to design something that embodied just my role as a community health consultant and a coach and mentor for nurses, and thinking about some fun ways for nurses to stay encouraged, to inspire your vision, and to dare you to be influentially visionary. So there's a couple of different items I'm going to reveal for you, a little bit of an unveiling, and I'm really excited to hear some of your feedback. As you can see, I'm wearing one of the shirts that's going to be a part of the gift set. You can one of these, or in the black, or the Visionary Nurse Change Agent will be included in that gift set. You get the mug, which all the mugs will just be the Living a Visionary Life mug with that cool, again, yellow inside, which that will be a part of that gift set. The Living a Visionary Life journal will also be in that gift set. And of course, again, like I said, a place to personalize it and to write down all the things that you love in there. And then finally, as I mentioned, the download code for either the Visionary Nurse 90 Days of Inspirational Musings on Being Influentially Visionary ebook or audiobook. You get one choice of either one, and you'll get a little download code in there, and we'll write it in for you, and you'll get that code and you can pick which one you want, and all of that will be a part of your gift set. And then you get a fun box. I think it's really important to have like some bright colors and fun, so you'll get a fun box. All of this is packaged in. So if you want to gift this to a colleague, a friend, those who might work at organizations that you want to gift a set to, a bunch of nurse colleagues or nurses that you work with, or those who just want to do an individual gift set, that is going to be available. And this is just my way, again, in my work as a coach and consultant, but specifically as a coach and mentor for nurses, to just encourage you and to just be able to dare to be influentially visionary. So I'm so excited. Check out more information at my website at visionarynurse.com. You can check it out at Facebook, Instagram as well. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Antonette Montalvo. But go ahead and snag those gift sets. It's never too late to inspire a nurse and allow a nurse to be influentially visionary. Thanks, everyone. So with all of that, especially just, again, for the work that you do, what do you feel like some of the biggest needs are for your organization, or even in your role or those you serve? What are some of those big ticket items that it's like, if I could fix this one thing, this would change it all?
Well, to be fairly honest, 0 to 3 has set me up organizationally to succeed very well. They've provided great resources on that end. But as far as the population we serve, if we keep bringing access to supportive services, for them to our local area, we will see positive change in moving forward. The Safe Babies Court team is a major step in that right direction towards that positive change. So I think as far as the county that we serve, one of the biggest things that we needed was a Safe Babies Court team in the area to say, hey, let's approach this in a different manner, in a manner that we've seen effective and we know that it works. So we are a part of the very change I think this community needs. And not only that, we're a part of identifying additional change that the community needs, which is, to me, the most exciting part.
Absolutely. And it's good to know that you're actually providing a service in a role that is going to meet a need that hopefully sets up a better legacy for the children and their health, right? Because again, just thinking about the broad perspective of it, having not only on the micro level, healthy families and children, but also on the macro level, thinking about communities and everything that pulls into the organizations and how it really wraps around and serves, that in itself is going to improve across the board, in my opinion, just how communities run and function, right? Because a lot of times, you have a lot of broken pieces to the puzzle, especially within communities that might have been forgotten for an X amount of time, who have been chronically under-resourced or who have always had to deal with a certain factor. So when you're trying to change that model, it requires a lot of intervention. It requires highlighting and pinpointing and getting that laser focused understanding of what is really needed right now so that as you move forward, you are setting an entirely new precedent for the community at large. So it's just amazing to kind of see those things highlighted and see them at the forefront. And the biggest thing is making sure that those who need it are able to actually access it. And because the biggest piece is like, you can have the best wonderful thing, but you really want to make sure those people access it. And I think it's great to see that in action and see how that happens. So, and thinking about kind of the final frontier in my mind, and thinking about the highlight of this show and this episode and what this podcast represents. How do you think, based off of what you know about nurses, how do you think nurses can support this work? Because nurses are groomed, in my opinion, for community leverage. Not only do we have an understanding of the clinical aspect of health and what happens in hospital settings and acute care and long-term facilities, but also being able to pull that information and apply it to the community front. Thinking about how nurses can educate, can be present, can help coordinate care. What do you think there are some ways that nurses can support some of the work that you all are doing?
Oh, wow. Nurses are essential. They're the professional eyes and ears to our lay eyes and ears, per se. No matter how much I learn in this position, it's not necessarily my profession to know the human body in the ways that a nurse must. It's not my profession to have that intricate knowledge as far as health wise that a nurse has. So when I lay my eyes on a situation and I say, oh, well, this family may look like they need this or they may need that concerning health. I can't make decisions like that I'm not groomed to make those decisions. Nurses can step in and say, these health things are going on. This is what's going on, as far as this family's health past, and not only that, nurses, like you said before, are such a present voice in communities because nurses are so widespread in various organizations. So from my point of view, as time goes on, I hope to see more and more nurses specializing in infant and toddler care, because one thing is amazing. I love it when I'm able to go to what is it, the ICR Nick where you see nurses that are specifically trained in infant and toddler care and in babies, and they just have such a way with children, in such a way with dealing with families that may have, may not understand as much as they need to know when it comes to their child. Nurses they're like a well of knowledge. And I lean heavily on nurses to help me understand developmental processes and things that's going on with families concerning health.
Right. Oh, that's so good. And I just appreciate you highlighting that point because it really is a collaboration, right? You do what you do best. And as nurses, we're able to do what we do best when we can see where we fit into the puzzle. And I think that's the biggest highlight point for any nurse is just to be able to fit well within the team and lead in the way that they need to do. So I love that you just mentioned that aspect of the skill set that NICU nurses really do have, neonatal ICU nurses, for those who may just be new to the nursing game, but that really deal with those complex issues of babies, of newborns, of neonates, those who may have been born very early, who have had other complex issues that have come along the way, especially right after delivery. And so just thinking about, as you go into that pediatric aspect of things, thinking about educating parents and families, working specifically in that 0 to 3 range, not only within the hospital setting, but in the community setting, it's a big deal, right? So I'm sure there might be families that may sustain trauma as a result of fill in the blank of things. But if there are women who might have sustained trauma and as a result, her baby might have delivered earlier or the baby might have ended up in the NICU or some kind of other complex things happen. Once they're home, they need to know what to do. They need to know, like your organization says, what's beyond the abuse. So just being able to work in conjunction in that way of educating, of caring for, of understanding what's a developmentally appropriate and what's, where do you need some extra services that might be helpful? Because there are a lot of different pieces and factors that need to come into play, not only after delivery, but going long term so that, some of these children have an opportunity to catch up, that they have an opportunity to lead and live successful lives despite some of the situations and the challenges that happen, because we know that window of time is so crucial in being able to make sure that things move forward, going ahead, and just having the right services in place and even knowing what questions to ask are a major component, especially within communities that might have been forgotten for a long amount of time or may not know what to do or where to go next. And I found, especially within my clinical line of work, there are many caregivers that it's not that they don't want to do something, they just don't know what they don't know. So just being able to provide as much information as possible is a very, very important aspect of delivering effective care and making sure that, once that person steps out of your hospital setting, your office, wherever you may be practicing, that they are able to continue to provide on a responsible level the care that they need to provide by having the information that they need. And that is such a big, big process of it. So for all you NICU nurses who are looking for, what do I do next if I'm done with the NICU, think about being a part of developmental teams and organizations such as this one, where you can educate families in the way of raising their 0 to 3-year-olds and figuring out how you can provide an extra voice and advocacy for parents, families, and caregivers and communities. So absolutely. I don't know if there's any last minute thoughts or questions that you have, Zay, or any things that you'd like to highlight or promote about your organization. I'd love to make sure that's added into this.
Well, I just want to say thank you for having me on, and thank you guys for what you do. I couldn't stress enough again the essential work that nurses do, and I thank you all so much for the hard work you put in and the long hours, definitely.
Thank you, Zay, and thank you for what you're doing. Thanks for working with the kids and babies and the families out there, and for just having a passion and a knowledge for this role. I'm sure it's not an easy role, and it definitely takes a special kind of person to be able to integrate themselves effectively and be a resource. So we wish you much success in all that you're doing. Thanks for being a part of the episode, and we look forward to seeing how things evolve.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So everyone, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for joining this episode of The Power in Partnership as a part of the Visionary Nurse podcast. As I mentioned, my name is Antonette Montalvo. I'm your host of the Visionary Nurse podcast. I am owner of Antonette Montalvo Consulting and Coaching Services, where I function as a community health consultant and coach and mentor for nurses, helping you understand and highlight how nurses can be essential in the community setting and really being able to provide those key places, leadership, and skill set that could truly transform not only at the bedside, but at the community as well. And also being able to inspire, educate, and coach those nurses who are looking to pivot into new roles and new opportunities and ways to be able to extend your skill set as a nurse, because it's needed now more than ever at this time and space that nurses truly are essential across the board to be able to change the landscape of healthcare. So I inspire you to just be able to dare to be influentially visionary in all that you do. Take care.